Good afternoon, everyone. I hope everybody had a nice lunch, relaxed and ready to go and not ready for a nap so we can talk about permitting transformation. And I'm just going to jump right in. I know many of you have heard this presentation before. Matter of fact, I believe the last 2 years I've presented on it at this conference, so I want to give an update. But my first slide, I wanted to give a little bit of background because I am under the assumption there may be some new folks hearing about this for the first time. So I wanted to give just a little bit of background. So bear with me, ones that have seen this before. I'm sure you'll be excited to hear it again. So I just want to jump right in. And again, as I've noticed, or as I mentioned, if you've heard the PT pre-presentation before, I know you've seen this graphic. But because we have some new folks, I wanted to give just a little bit of background. This program began back when Secretary Regan joined DEQ in early 2017, and he had received a lot of feedback from different stakeholders about the permitting process in DEQ, noting that, hey, it'd be great if it could be online, could be a little bit more modernized, maybe a little bit more transparent. And so DEQ began working with some internal and external stakeholders. Those internal stakeholders were the DEQ folks that did the permitting, along with some DEECS folks and some other interested parties inside of DEQ. And then our external stakeholders were the folks that get permitted, as well as interested parties and others that had an interest in knowing information about permitting in DEQ. So from meeting with these stakeholders, we identified different priorities and goals that we wanted to put towards this initiative. At the end of 2017, DEECS was asked to lead this project. And at that time, Lisa Shanklin, one of your coaches, began working on it with me in the early part of 2018. So we have become very familiar with this project and know it inside and out. So we're going to talk a little bit about that with you today. So I just want to note, and as I'm sure many of you could easily determine, that this is an enormous lift for the department, because as of today, there's no legislatively mandated funding for this program. There's a lot of other states that are going through this type of initiative, and the majority of them did receive outside funding. We have not yet, but we anticipate that, or we hope that we will. But in the meantime, we did want to focus on improving our efficiencies with our existing resources. That was very important for the Secretary, and that was one of the very first objectives. We need to make sure that we're as efficient as we can be with what we have. Before we look to get money to implement new technologies, we have to ensure that we are as lean as possible and where it makes sense. So as we worked on improving those efficiencies, we started to develop our goals related to this project so that we could become more modernized while we looked at receive more funding. And so we are going to be asking for legislative funding in the future. So of course, we had to start with getting a baseline and to understand the information that we have. And this graphic you see, as I mentioned, Lisa Shanklin earlier, she actually created this graphic. And when we started in early 2018, we said, okay, well, we know we got to get a baseline. That's the first thing you got to do before you start on a project. So we decided, how do we get this information? I thought, well, I'll just call somebody, and I know many of you have heard the story before, and we'll be able to get it. Well, currently that does not exist. There's not one person that owns all this information or one system that you could go and pull it all. So Lisa began reaching out to the different divisions and different programs. Now, I want to state here that all of our programs and divisions, they know their data, they have their data, but in order for us to collate it on a departmental-wide basis, we had to go and physically ask for it, and they had to do pools, and they had to prepare it and send it to us. So the whole effort to get all the information took about 1 to 2 months. Again, the divisions have it, but how do we get it at departmental level? So the scope of this whole project involves about 200 different permits, certificates, licenses, and agreements within the department. I refer to it, or we refer to it, as the permitting transformation project, but it also includes certificates, licenses, and agreements, because quite frankly, there's a lot of these different permit certificates within the department, but it would be very odd to call it permitting certificates, licenses, agreement transformation program. So of course we refer to it as permitting. So as I say permits, know that I'm including all those as well. Within the baseline year of 2017, we issued almost 20,000 different permits that were processed in 1 year. So you see that big bubble there, marine fisheries, that is all fishing license. So we chose to leave them out because they already had a system that they were working on. So the PTP is only focusing on DAQ, air quality, coastal management, DMLR, which is energy, mineral, land resources, waste management, and water resources. So these are our goals. You've seen these. Of course, there's a lot more going on with this program, but these are the high-level goals. and you have most likely seen them before. However, I did want to mention that as we've gone through this project and we've worked on it, and now we're calling it an actual program because it's so large and encompassing, we've tweaked some of our goals to better capture what we want to get to. And number 2 is a good example. It used to say we wanted to have an online searchable database. Well, we since have expanded that to include analytics, so you could go and look for records and reports, so you could look up different, sorry, my cat just jumped in my lap and it threw me off a little bit. And the ironic thing is, my boss and I were just talking about that earlier, about cats interrupting presentations. So forgive me for that. Her name is Luna. She was excited to meet all y'all. So back to PTP. So number 2 is a goal that we, of course, have adjusted and expanded on. And so that's how we've been going through this program. As we learn more, we want to make sure that we adapt and adjust for that. So we have these big, lofty goals. How do we achieve them? How do we make sure that we're successful, and how do we measure success? We had to step back and look at how the department needed an enterprise approach and not just our siloed way of doing business. And as we gathered data, it was very apparent, again, as we go to get it, all the divisions know their data, they know their information, but we need to look at it holistically from an enterprise approach. So this enterprise approach is going to include how we manage our permitting processes as well as how we manage our data. So one thing that happened earlier this year, our secretary asked us, as we've been going through this, listen, as we want to go online and as we want to get these permits online, what is our timeline? I want us to look at how we can get all this accomplished within 5 years, which is a big lift. So of course, that's heavily reliant on funding, which we haven't received yet. However, as we prepare for that, we know we have to lay the framework and the structure for this program, as well as working with some DEQ seed funding for proofs of concepts to prepare for when we get the full funding. There in the center is Microsoft Dynamics CRM. That's the tool that the Department of Information Technology, DIT, identified for us to use for the online permitting. That's a program that we already had licensing for, and we've recently learned that another state is also using CRM for their tool to do their online permitting. So along with our enterprise system, we knew to be successful, we must ensure that as a department that we're moving forward with transparency, efficiency, and we're unifying the efforts that we're doing. Another effort that we're working towards is to be more standardized where it makes sense. And I'm sure for many folks out there hearing about government being more standardized, you may question, is that even possible? Is it feasible? And yes, it is. We're going to talk about that in a few minutes. But to be successful and to make sure that we're utilizing our time, we know that that's going to be a critical piece. Down here in the bottom of the slide, we've highlighted some clear benefits to the PTP with our enterprise approach. That includes better documentation, customer satisfaction, consistent data, are all clear advantages that everyone here I'm sure could recognize. But we also really couldn't go through this slideshow today without acknowledging the importance of, during times of COVID, natural disasters like hurricanes, DEQ has to be more resilient and ensure business continuity. So a system like this that we are proposing, being able to apply for permits online, being able to search for data online, allows us to do that. This slide is highlighting some of our high-level capabilities for our enterprising system that we know will benefit all of our stakeholders, which is internal to DEQ as well as the external folks, which is all of you here listening. So this will include our customers being able to apply, track, pay, and receive your permit all online. This isn't a new concept. If you've heard this presentation before, you know that's where we wanted to go. So over the last year, though, we began on focusing on the need to ensure that our data and our analytics also have a clear enterprise approach. So as you can imagine, as we're talking about moving permitting online and being able to look at data online, we have to make sure that we have a system that can speak to our CRM, and that applies to every division, and that every division is speaking the same language. So clearly it became evident that not just data needs, or not just the permitting processes need to have an enterprise approach, but our data does as well. We need to be able to be more uniform in our reporting across the department in order to make science-based decisions, but also those external to DEQ want to be able to find information quickly, accurately, and uniformly. Here is, again, some of the needs that we recognize will be a benefit from an enterprise system and why we need to do it. We knew all these benefits before we started. However, as we started getting into this, we clearly recognized some key things that maybe we knew were important to begin with, but became even more apparent as we were going through this process. I'm not going to go through each one of these, but I did want to highlight for this group that digital modernization is critical in this day and age, and we want permittees to have a seamless experience. The other critical thing is we want to make sure we have real-time data integration, because that benefits the regulated community, interested parties, rule makers, and DEQ alike. Currently today, and I'm sure many of you can relate to this as well, DEQ has a lot of legacy IT systems with manually disconnected, paper-driven processes. And all these siloed data sources, they lead to a high cost and poor agility. And that's something as a department we want to recognize and be able to move forward from. Things don't happen always quickly in state government, but we know that's our end goal and what we want to get to. Another thing I wanted to highlight here was the accuracy, and we're going to talk about that some on our next slide. So you can see this slide here, and it is representing the estimated applications that are submitted correctly the first time. So when you fill out a permit application and you submit it, an estimate from the department right now is only about 20% are submitted correctly. So how do we come about this information? When our process engineers were working with all the permitting processes to do their current state analysis and their current state mapping, the feedback that they received from all the folks going through this, they were able to determine about 80% were submitted incorrectly. 80% of our applications were submitted incorrectly the first time. So we presented this estimate to the secretary, and he said, well, look, I want more information about that. So as a result, Lisa started reaching out to the divisions to get this information. Again, the information was gathered quickly because we had to reach out. It was gathered quickly by us reaching out directly to the divisions to get the estimates, but I just want to note, this isn't necessarily metrics that they were keeping up with. This is based on what they know or from their experience, or maybe they did have a system that would allow them to say exactly that, say 43% of our applications are submitted correctly. But again, this just demonstrated that there is no central data center that we can go and pull information in a centralized, consistent, clean way. And again, I want to reiterate this, that our current way of doing business as a department, some may consider it antiquated when you have to gather information like this. I want to say the divisions have it, but to get it may not always be an easy process, and it may be time consuming. This also demonstrated that we have inconsistent, fragmented, missing data. So, but again, I want to be fair, this isn't something that the divisions have been asked for before. But even beyond that, how we gather it and what that means is, what is the root cause for these incomplete applications? How frustrating must it be for the permittee to apply, think that they've done and their time clock started, but then we realize, well, wait a minute, it wasn't done correctly. So you've mailed it in, you've spent 3 or 4 days getting that into the program, they reviewed it, noticed that it wasn't correct, they send it back to you. How efficient are we being with our time? How efficient are we being with your time? Then that led us to start asking the question, well, what are we asking? Why is it not complete? Are we asking the right questions? All these things that some of us in DEQ may not have taken the time to step back and look at before, because maybe we're just doing our business, we were getting the permits out, we were getting things done. This is a clear opportunity to step back and go, well, are we doing our customers the best service? Are we doing ourselves the best service? So this is just one opportunity to demonstrate why we need a performance management plan, but also how do we make sure we're doing business in the best way possible. So as I mentioned last year, I presented on this project, and I wanted to give an update about what we've been doing over the last year, because I'm sure many of you are going, okay, so what's happened since last year? So I wanted to step back and say, since last year, as we started diving deeper into this program or this project, we recognized that in order to be successful, we had to create and stabilize our internal program structure, and we couldn't effectively move forward with a project of this magnitude without getting some clear structure and governance set around it. We had to bring in an outside expert to help us. So in December of 2019, we brought in a program manager. Her name is Chinmoy Deshpante. She works very closely with Lisa and me, as well as the programs, as well as DIT, to help get control over this program and make sure that we're being as efficient as we can and we're delivering what we need to deliver. Once she came on, she immediately helped us create and establish our structure and governance, as I just mentioned, and we'll talk about that in a few minutes. But as part of that structure, we've established and launched the Delivery Steering Committee, which meets weekly, And those are the folks that are responsible for developing the IT solution, but also leading the different work groups. And these work groups that we have launched include a communications work group, a process improvement work group, a registration and standardized workflow work group, and a data work group. The other thing that we have launched is the executive steering committee, and that's our senior leadership, including all the directors. We want to make sure that all the divisions have a voice, and that we are sure that we're getting good decisions made, and that we're able to escalate issues, and also ensure that we're making decisions and all that information is flowing appropriately. The other thing that we did, is our black belt process engineers completed a current state process mapping for all the DEQ processes that were identified going into the CRM. And as we move forward, we have to make sure that we prepare for legislative requests as we ask for money, but also as they learn more about this project. That includes a more robust business plan, performance management plan that includes metrics, a timeline, and an ROI. So again, we're just in the beginning stages of addressing the DEQ enterprise data strategy, which we hope will include DEQ bringing in a data architect and a data scientist to help us get a current state analysis of where we are now with our data, but also develop a system for as we move forward. We're also continuing to try to secure legislative funding. We can demonstrate all the effort that DEQ has put on their own right now with no outside funding. That shows a clear commitment that DEQ is committed to doing this and getting this done, because everything that's been done thus far has been with our own internal resources. And I talked a little bit about how we made sure our escalations and communication was demonstrated within this program structure. This is our governance. And with our governance and communication framework, our goal is to define the shortest and most efficient path to value through more optimization of our time and our resources. And we want to make sure that we're taking steps to mitigate risk and issues and track measure success as we prepare for deployment and maintain solutions with measures like cost and scope. So we have a program manager that came in and helped us with that, because prior to her joining us, Lisa and I and the others working on this knew that's what we wanted to do, but to articulate it in that way and be able to actually understand it and explain it was just so eye-opening, having Chin come in and help us with this. And for me, being in the department for almost 20 years, to see the department taking this approach to implement this project or this program just is a clear demonstration how committed they really are to it. But we know we can't be successful without having this kind of structure in place. So again, ultimately, we want to drive success of PTP and accelerate business value. Again, our program manager language, but I understand what it means now and I stand behind it, and it just makes perfect sense. So again, having this structure again helps us to allow our divisions to get out of their silos and us look at things from a departmental level, but ensures that each division also has a voice. So this slide is a high-level snapshot from what we gather at our weekly delivery steering committee meetings. You can see here that we have 3 permits that are in flight right now, as well as we have other work groups that are providing updates. This is nowhere near the level of detail that they update us on a weekly basis, but it just helps us to be able to have this quick, digestible look for our statuses as we present to the executive steering committee on a monthly basis. Once we have full funding, we plan to have 5 to 6 more work streams going at one time, and that will also allow us to have a lot more updates on a monthly basis. So with our optimized and standardized workflow that we're going to talk about in just a second, along with all the program structure and governance, we anticipate a quicker delivery and higher rate of success, which allows us to be, again, more efficient with the structure we put in place, with the resources that we have now, and allows us to be prepared for when we get more resources. Earlier this year, after the process engineers had completed all the current state mapping for all the different permitting processes, they compiled all that information and they reached out to us and said, hey, look, when we started this process, everybody said that their workflow, their process was so unique and they're different from everyone else. And of course, from experience, the black belt process engineer said, yeah, let's see, my guess is they're probably a lot more similar than they are different. And that's exactly what they proved. After the analysis of all the different processes, they determined that over 80% of all the processes in DEQ have the same key steps. So that was an aha moment. And I want to say we're not unique in North Carolina. Other states that we have talked to are doing this exact same thing. They mapped all their processes. They've honed it down to a standardized workflow. Some only have one, some may have a couple, but they were able to do that and they were able to demonstrate that it works. So for us, we step back and go, okay, well, this is great. 80% are already doing it the same way. But what we want to make sure is as we create the standardized workflow, we have an opportunity for nuances within a program that they can generate these business rules that'll help them identify or help them address individual issues that they may have or needs that they may have. But as a generality across the department, everybody's working under the same workflow, or the majority of us are working under the same workflow. So this below image here at the bottom, that's that permit tracker. Before we've referenced it as the pizza tracker, but this is what an applicant would see, and they know where they are in each step. We're also contemplating that you could click on that arrow. So if you're in the application submitted, you could click on that, and you may see who has that, how long they've had it. It allows you to have a lot more transparency into the process, and we're working on our requirements for each one of those steps, and we'll have more of that to report on next year. Or actually probably before that, but if I don't see y'all, it'll be next year. So DEQ is also working with our communications team to map out what our standard public review and public notice process looks like right now. And we're contemplating that we may be able to have a standardized public review process for them as well. So for you as a customer to know that each process is done the same way can help you understand what to expect when you're looking at a public notice for DAQ or a public notice for DWR. If you know that it's going to be done in the same way, you can anticipate what to expect. So this is our standardized future state workflow. This is just the draft, it's not finalized. But the first step in standardizing the workflow in DEQ was the very first thing we had to do, and I mentioned this in the very first slide, is we had to lean our processes. We had to eliminate any unnecessary steps and improve the user journey. And that user journey is for the folks here listening to this presentation, but also internally to DEQ. As we were mapping out some of the processes, one of the things that came up is when they were doing certain steps, the process engineers, and many of you are familiar with this, would say, well, why do you do it that way? Well, it's just how we've always done it. And I want to state the permitting agencies, the permitting groups, they're able to deliver and do their job, and they're great at it. But it still didn't mean there's not an opportunity to step back and go, well, why are we doing it that way? Why are we adding in that step? Do we need that? So to be able to take that opportunity to step back and look at it and look at their way to be more efficient was critical. So even if we never went into an online solution, just to have that done is a phenomenal feat and a big success. So here is a swim lane diagram for standardized workflow. And you see the different lanes. We have the applicant, and then we have the CRM, which is the solution, the IT solution that we're using. And then you have where it is in the process and who touches it. The dark blue boxes will represent the standardized workflow, and the light blue boxes are the customizable pieces for the different permitting programs. So why is this important? This approach will allow us to have quicker development in CRM. So that's as we move these processes online, but it'll also result in cost savings because we're reusing this workflow in CRM. This ensures that we get the shortest path to value. And you as a customer, again, just like when we were talking about the public notice, that standardized workflow for that, if you know that each process is done the same way, it allows you as a customer to anticipate what's going to be happening next. Here is our execution roadmap with all the delivery phases that we have right now for moving our current paper-driven permitting processes into CRM, onto the online platform. But in order for us to be efficient and transparent, we need to make sure that we understood each one of these implementation phases or the delivery phases. So in order to do that, we're working on a more detailed work breakdown structure that will include gates, handoffs, timelines, costs, a change control, to ensure that we're using our resources in the best way possible, but also we can demonstrate how we're using money as we get it, but also to ensure we're getting a product as quickly as possible and we're being as efficient as we can. Again, this ensures that we don't have scope creep, and it allows us to have more predictability. The structure will also help the user experience and ensure we're delivering what DEQ programs need, as well as what you as an applicant or a permittee needs. We will have the different roles and responsibilities spelled out, and this allows us to be more accountable and more transparent. It also allows us to make sure we're getting everything documented, because as people have an interest in understanding more about the process and where we are, the more documentation we have, the better.
Hey, Jamie, you have about 5 minutes.
Oh my goodness. Well, good news, this is the last slide. So this is what's next. Where are we going? And I wanted to show this because some of you may be saying, well, there's a lot of talk and a lot of stuff behind the scenes, but where are you headed next? Right now, one of our key efforts is going to be to establish or look at establishing an enterprise data strategy. But in order to do that, we have to really focus on what is our current state. So we're making an effort to understand that better. And that's what we hope to be able to have an enterprise architect and a data scientist to help us with, or a data architect, excuse me. We are going to finalize the standardized workflow and then do a gap analysis against that standardized workflow with the current programs that are going into CRM to make sure that their future state will work against that standardized workflow. We'll release the first 2 permits in CRM in early 2021, and that's going to be erosion and sediment control, and then a coastal management major permit. So those 2 we hope to have, or IT has stated that they should be released in early 2021. And those right now are kind of acting as our proof of concept that we were able to launch using some DEQ seed funding. The other key thing we're doing is completing our PTP business plan, ROI, performance management plan, all these things that we know we need to do, because I assure you, people will ask questions and we want to make sure that we're armed to present the answers and to show what we're doing, and we can show our roadmap and we can explain where we're going and why we're doing it. And then the other key thing we have to do is secure our resources, and that includes staffing and funding. That's an issue I imagine is across the board for everyone. So that's me, I'm done talking. These are an opportunity to ask any questions if you have any. And a quick note, the analogy here, I have to say it because I always do this. We're all working like bees. If you've ever sat down and watched bees, they work in a uniformed way or uniform manner. Everything they create is uniform. They work together to create a great product. And side note, these are my bees. So now for questions about the bees or about PTP.
So there are not currently any questions in the box, but if you want to ask questions, feel free to type them into the chat box within your control panel there on the right.
I timed it perfect.
You did.
And people can ask questions about the kitty cat that ran by. She would probably love to make another appearance. It's probably more entertaining at times than the presentation itself.
There was a comment that someone also has a cat named Luna.
Oh, see? We're all like bees working together for a common good. That was a stretch, but I had to do it.
I like it. Usually it's a chicken.
It normally is, so I have chickens too. That is normally what I throw up there, but I did these bees. So just for anybody that cares, and while y'all are typing in questions, can y'all see the queen bee in here? Angela, do you see it?
I don't, but I have a bunch of screens open.
No,
is she the one without any stripes?
Yep,
Right.
she's the big one, right? She's right in the center, so that makes it easier.
Yep.
We were doing a hive check one day and we had to find the queen, and my mother and I are not good at keeping bees, so we were excited when we saw her, so we took a picture.
Nice. Okay, there are still no questions, so I think you are good.
All right, well, here's my information. If anybody has any questions, comments, need anything, or just want to tell me that, hey, you should be doing X, Y, Z better, here's my information. Please reach out to me. I'm happy to talk to anyone. And that's it for me, Dan.
All right. Thank you so much, Jamie. What a great update and very, very valuable information. Next up are the leaders of Pfizer Sanford's sustainability initiatives and their environmental management system. All right, Connor and team, you should have control.
All right. Wait for everybody to log on and get us set up here. This is the battle we are all fighting between different platforms these days. Then let's do the swap. All
And
right.
we are seeing your title slide full screen, so just to give you confirmation on that.
All right. So I'll give it to Paola to start.
So hi everyone, my name is Paola Adame. I work in communications at the Pfizer site, And I also lead the Sustainability Champions group on site. And that group focuses on cultural sustainability initiatives.
And good afternoon, I'm Connor Jarvis. I'm in the EHS department at Pfizer at Sanford, and I help lead and direct the waste reduction projects and waste operations throughout the facility. I'm also a proud member of our on-site wildlife team.
Hey everybody, I'm Haley Jones. I'm a continuous improvement specialist deploying Lean Six Sigma tools at the Pfizer site, and also a member of the wildlife team and a beekeeper. So I did see that queen bee.
Hey everyone, I'm Caroline Macklin. I also work in EHS at Sanford, and I am the lead of our overall sustainability program at the site.
And hi, everybody. I'm Chuck. Nice to see you guys, or wish I could see you guys in person, maybe next year. I EHS manager here at the site in Sanford. I have a lot of different responsibilities in the area of environmental health and safety, including biosafety now. And I'm also supporting a huge project we have on site, which we'll hear more about shortly.
Okay, so just a little background context to give you guys an idea about how we run our sustainability program at the site is previously we had kind of like one big team, and we found that, you know, there were a lot of meetings and there was a lot of talk, but we weren't getting a lot of stuff done. So what we've done over the past 2 years is we have 2 groups that work towards our sustainability goals now. And so on the bottom left, it says Sustainability Champions. And that is the group that Paola runs that focuses on building our sustainability culture on site, you know, building the knowledge base, engaging colleagues, and kind of, you know, getting everyone on board with that message. And then on the right side, every year we have annual sustainability goals, and, you know, the technical project implementation is really important, and we work a lot with our engineering team and EHS team to drive those projects. So we've kind of split it up into culture and then technical project implementation, and that's really helped us not only, you know, increase the knowledge and awareness of sustainability on site, but also get us to our sustainability goals. So yeah, I'll hand it to Chuck.
Okay, hi everybody. So yeah, I'm pretty excited to be surrounded by my young colleagues here, and they're just bringing so much energy to our sustainability program at our site, and I've seen it evolve since I've been on site since 2012, and it's just really an awesome thing. Our site is located off of US 1 as you're heading into Sanford. Fun fact about Sanford City is it is the geographical center of the state of North Carolina, in case you didn't know that, something I learned recently. So our facility is on 240 acres of land just off US 1 there, and we're a multi-product facility. We're Carolina Star certified site as well. Got certified in 2007. I think the next slide, please, Connor. And so just a high level of what we do at our site in Sanford. 2 main focus areas around vaccine manufacturing and gene cell therapy manufacturing. And on the vaccine side, we're kind of a multi-product facility where we make the intermediates, the drug substances for certain vaccines. One of the more common ones you may have heard about is Prevnar 13. And if you have children, they may have received, most likely would have received this vaccine when they were young. Prevnar 13 is a pneumococcal pneumonia vaccine, and it's also approved for adults over 50. So that's one of our biggest drug intermediate products for the site. We're also doing some work around commercialization and scale up. We have one particular vaccine conjugate that we're working on that is under FDA fast track, and it's It's a bacterial infection called C. difficile, which is one of the more common healthcare associated infections that can be picked up in hospitals. So that's one we're really excited about, and we're growing at our site for that. And then another area of focus for our site, which we're really excited about here recently, is gene cell therapy manufacturing, where we're working on some cutting edge type products. A disease known as Duchenne's muscular dystrophy. We're working on an expansion, a $500 million expansion at our site right now to build out a facility. We're in the final construction stages of that, and we're hoping in 2022 to be able to go to product with that. And this Duchenne's muscular dystrophy is, it's just a horrible disease. It strikes boys, and essentially it's about 99% fatal. So many of the boys don't make it into their 20s. So it's real purpose-driven work we're doing at the site. And I get kind of choked up when I think about that. But, you know, to come to work every day to know that we're making a life-changing product, and to do the best we can, and to do everything we can do to nurture our environment around this production. So pretty exciting stuff. We are expanding our facility, and hope to continue to do that as time goes forward at our site. So I'll kick it back over to you, Connor. Next slide.
Haley here.
Alrighty,
Sorry,
so
Haley.
we're just going to highlight, each circle here is one project that we're going to highlight. So as we go along, we'll kind of walk through those. And of course, if you have any questions, send those in the chat and we'll address them at the end.
All right, so embarking on our sustainability journey around the Pfizer Sanford site, we got two projects to highlight first. The first of which is our Wildlife and Industry Together certification. And this is through the North Carolina Wildlife Federation. They have this great initiative in which industries can set aside and the part of the land that they reside on. And you saw the overview picture that Chuck was talking to. We are blessed with a lot of land at the Sanford site, and it's up to us to be stewards of it. So we have set aside 72 acres for preservation and enhancing the biological diversity. So you can see the pie chart on the right there, split pretty equally between 3 different microbiomes that we've preserved. We got meadows that are maintained historically, and then we have woodlands, and then we have some delineated wetlands on our side as well. Nice picture of the wetland, of the meadows down there. We have bluebird boxes that we check and monitor, and this one's really nice. It's nestled in between some cosmos that were planted. We seed and till our meadows with wildflowers that are native to the southeast. Right now we have coreopsis growing in that tract. That picture's from last year. But these, the wildlife team is really been good for our culture aspect, because not everybody's going to be doing the technical work, engineering that's going to be lowering CO2 or water use, but everybody can make a tangible impact in the environment in their own way. And this has really allowed colleagues to roll up their sleeves and get engaged with the culture that we are being a steward of here. The next project to kind of highlight is going to be the hiking trails, also out of the wildlife team, promoting physical and mental health and just a lot of joy. It's nice to break away and do this loop through our woodlands. It's a 1.5 mile loop, and we're actually working on an extension earlier this year. It's not as clearly marked as this one, so it's always a process. But one thing that we've really found, and I know everybody on this call, for the most part, can geek out about environmental regulations and appreciate RCRA and all the like for their own worth. But when you're going out and advocating and communicating this to your colleagues within the environmental management system, it helps to really have that name with a face with nature. When you get them out and experiencing and going on a hike on their workplace, it makes communication and advocacy for the environmental compliance obligations and sustainability goals all the more meaningful because it's impacted their heart as well.
Alrighty. So the next project that we are going to highlight for you guys relates to what we do in the space of greenhouse gas emission reduction. So this has probably been one of the longest standing, programs we've had on site. So since 2012, we operate a biomass boiler that produces plant steam for the site. So if you saw in those first pictures, those big like stainless steel vessels and tanks, a lot of steam is used to clean and sterilize those and other equipment on site. So what we do is, if you look in the bottom picture, we use wood chips from local logging operations as fuel. And this is technically a carbon neutral fuel source for us because otherwise they just sit in the field and let off methane emissions. So we use those on site in the boiler, and it has the capability to meet up to 70% of our site's plant steam demand. So the top picture right there is the silo. So it's kind of funny because everyone on site, like, you can see it, it's tall, it's definitely kind of like iconic Stanford thing, and people are always like, there's the boiler, and I'm like, okay, it's not really the boiler, it's the silo that has all the wood chips in it, but I don't want to bring people down, so I'm like, yeah, it's the boiler. But no, we have a trivia question. Yes. So we'll go to the next slide, related to energy. And
so
this
Scott,
is the pull function, right?
Yes. So Scott, would you mind pulling up the question for the energy? Okay, so if the audience would take about 15 to 30 seconds to the poll. And I don't have visibility of the results, so to close it.
Yep, we've had about 66% of the people voting, so just give it a few more seconds.
This is not a graded response, so you don't have to, there's no.
All right, I'm gonna close the poll now and share that.
Ooh.
So if you can see those results, we have steam and hot water generation at 46% and HVAC, heating and cooling at 43%.
Okay.
And,
all right.
Go into the next screen, you can see HVAC and heating and cooling is
steam and hot water is a close second, but yeah, we have a lot of classified spaces on site that we have to keep certain air exchange rates, certain temperatures, humidity set points. So that's the biggest one for us.
Okay, so moving into one of our waste reduction and waste minimization projects is the single-use gasification. So before dipping into the details on this one, I want to shed some light and some context for folks who might not be familiar with the pharmaceutical manufacturing process. In summary, there's two ways to make a vaccine, on a very high level, of course. But the first way, and traditional way, you would think, visualize your local brewery, whether you're in Raleigh or Durham or in Asheville. You have a lot of local breweries to visualize. But you know how you see those tall stainless steel vessels maybe in the background and in the area where they're making their product. It wouldn't be unlike what you would see at a traditional pharmaceutical facility. Tall stainless steel vessels that we would use to ferment our product, and then you would transfer it to a smaller vessel for purification and furthermore. But to after those stainless steel vessels are used, you need to clean them and rinse them per FDA regulations for a second use. So lots of caustic and acid and water and purified water and steam used to clean in these cycles. So as a result, one of the very energy intensive processes ends up being from the cleaning steps. So that's the first way to make vaccines. The second, and the new and up and coming way, is to use single-use bags like you see in this picture here. And some of them can range from size of a little IV bag all the way to the size of a mattress, like this one. And same thing, you would ferment in these bags, and because it's a liner, you would take it out and dispose of it. So they're great in the sense that you have a lower resource and a lower energy and water demand, but it's always tricky because now you're left with this very hard to recycle waste stream. You can tell by the film, plastic film, and the silicone tubing that no single stream recycler is going to be willing to take this in its current state. So we pride ourselves in being the first in the industry to use the gasification approach for this for a sustainable waste disposal. And what we do is we send it to a vendor where these bags get shredded into a pulp, and then that gets turned into an alternative fuel use. And that alternative fuel has certain heating demand that is met, and then it gets sent to another facility where that alternative fuel is then gasified into synthesis gas. And one thing that we really are very happy about is we know that our synthesis gas from our processing materials is actually replacing what would have been a current coal demand fossil fuel. So we can feel very good about the carbon offsetting and the benefit that we're adding to more of a circular economy. Rather than simply disposing of the waste, we're producing another economic good. So this was done in our gene therapy manufacturing areas, and the single-use bags are being in other areas in the site, and we're going to be phasing in this disposal as well.
All right, so we can now move on to talking about our composting program. This is a program that we implemented in 2017, and out of all of the things you're learning about during this presentation, this has probably had the biggest impact culturally on the site, because every colleague, whether they're new or established, could engage with it and participate in it. So we launched the program with this large display that you can see in the picture. The display was meant to educate colleagues and get them familiar with composting, helping them understand how simple it can be to send less and less waste to the landfill. So now that we have a couple years under our belt, we're now sending an estimated 50,000 pounds of compost a year. And our food providers also help contribute to that number. But we do hope to continue seeing that number grow, and we are actually working to install composting stations throughout the whole site, so in every area, to make it more convenient and accessible to every colleague. And the whole initiative as a whole has been very successful in educating colleagues, and then it has also encouraged them to compost at home, which is really nice to hear. All right, and then we have our next trivia.
Yeah.
All right, the poll has been launched.
Give it about 15 to 30 seconds.
We have some very active participants. We're hitting about 75% participation rate, so maybe we can beat it on this question. Oh, up to 79, 82. All right, it's hanging around 82. We'll close the poll
All right.
and share the results.
Okay, so it's looking like 15%.
All right. 15% is the correct answer.
Awesome. All right, and then moving on now to the herb garden. It's very closely related to composting because we actually use some of the compost as the soil that we use to plant the herbs in the parcel that you also see in this picture. And so once these herbs are grown, they are used to prepare meals in our cafe. So they are then served back to our colleagues, and it continues the whole cycle of sustainability.
Alrighty. So this project right here kind of hits at the energy and water nexus. So on site, this is a project we piloted last year, and it is using sphagnum moss in our cooling tower instead of chemicals. So we have an administration building on site that has its own cooling tower to just serve that building. And this technology was brought to us by some of the people who do our water testing and help us with water quality stuff. And they're like, oh, we've seen this used, right? So what it is we get this dehydrated moss in the bottom picture in bags, and it sits in this little crab cage kind of thing in the basin of the cooling tower, and the water moves through it and, you know, cleans and purifies the water. And we have seen probably our cycle times have doubled. So we can reuse the water many more times. So we're probably, you know, cycling about 8 times before we send the water to drain instead of 4 or 5. And since the moss has really improved the water quality overall, there's less buildup on the tubes inside of the cooling tower, which also leads to energy savings because it doesn't have to work as hard to do what it needs to do. So this project has been really successful for us in that one small cooling tower. So we currently have plans in 2021 to install essentially a larger version of this at our central utilities building, and that will service the rest of our cooling towers on site, and will be completely free of chemical treatment in those. So it's really good from a sustainability and also from an EHS perspective. Don't have to use so many chemicals.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so moving on to our last couple of projects here. So one project that really kind of gets on that colleague piece, even in addition to the ones Paola discussed, are riding the van pool. So Pfizer provides several vans to shuttle us from different areas around the triangle down to Sanford. So up to 14 people can ride in a van. It really saves a lot of emissions from everybody driving their own cars, but also is saving them, you know, wear and tear on their cars as well, is also really cost effective for individual colleagues to carpool like this. In addition, it just gives us some time back, you know, instead of everybody driving, they can sit back and relax, talk to other colleagues, and kind of meet other people that they might not work with on a daily basis. So really fun way to get to work, I think. And we're looking to expand this as our site grows in the next coming years.
Just to jump in here, we're getting close to that 5-minute mark, and we've got about, I think we have one question.
Okay, we have a point for Q&A at the end, and we can accept it then, or feel free to email it to us after the presentation.
So we also have beehives on site. So Connor and I are pretty heavily involved in keeping these bees nice and healthy, but we really enjoy being able to not only increase the biodiversity on our site, contribute to more in that sense, but also propagating a species that's continually at risk. So in the picture here, you can see a couple of us doing a hive inspection. Perhaps we might see a queen on this like you saw earlier. So we really like to have this as kind of like a out of the box kind of way to promote some types of sustainability that people aren't typically exposed to. Not a lot of people have seen a beehive, dressed up in a suit, opened it up and seen how they work. So a really awesome way to get colleagues more excited about sustainability out of the box. And we also hope to harvest enough honey to serve in the cafeteria and share with colleagues. So just a little trivia question. This can surprise some people, but how many bees do you think live in one colony? So this would be one queen bee and basically how many babies she has.
All right, so last time we had 82% participation. We're getting close, 78. A few more people buzz in.
I'm sure Jamie knows the answer.
All right, we're at 80. We didn't quite make it there, but I'm going to close it and share.
So good guesses, good guesses.
Good guesses, yeah. It's actually 50,000.
50,000, yep. A healthy colony will have anywhere between 20 to 60,000. So typically it hovers around 50.
I'll just interject here. Being on the wildlife team, I had the opportunity to taste the honey, and let me tell you, it was sweet. Not only in taste, but to be able to appreciate the fruits of the labor after checking on them throughout the spring and the summer. Appreciating things that are sweet, recognition and awards of our program, they are sweet, but hopefully y'all have a good context after seeing at least some of the projects that we have here on site. The recognition is not why we do what we do. It's really, we're only being able to have the opportunity to speak with you all because of many folks that aren't even able to all be on this panel that have invested their time, their passions, and their interest in service for the environment. So the recognition is a cherry on top of the sundae that we really truly get to enjoy. On the left there, people that might be worried, that is a pre-COVID picture. We promise that was in 2019 in October when we received our stewardship award. On the right, that was internal recognition that we've gotten, the Safety and Sustainability Star Awards through Pfizer Network Award. We are very grateful and thankful to receive that. I went and checked. There was 143 submissions internally for this award, and only 3 were chosen for the sustainability portion, one of which being the structure and the environmental management of the sustainability structure and environmental management for our site that Caroline went through at the beginning. So we're very thankful for that. Before we close, and I'll give you to Paola for one last slide, we like to see sustainability, I'll tell you like analogy, we like to see sustainability as a sheet of music. And in order for the music to play, you need each individual instrument playing its own sound, contributing its own value. And it's only when you zoom out enough, you get to hear and enjoy the music of the symphony that all of us are playing. So hopefully this map kind of allows you to at least zoom out on our music that we're playing as an ESI steward. for the environment, as we all are in their own respective sites.
All right, so as stewards, the key takeaway that we hope we are able to communicate with this presentation is how important it is for us to have a culture of inclusion. So this means that we want people to get involved where they are interested and understand that we all have an impact on the performance of the site. So we actively care about everything we do at the site. It's how we think about safety, and we treat sustainability as an extension of that. And our whole sustainability program has been successful because of how we can leverage that aspect of our culture. And it's exciting because everybody can do this. You know, we can all work to create positive behaviors and change mindsets.
All right, excellent. Thank you so much, Pfizer team, and congratulations on your ESI Steward recognition as well. I'll turn it over to Marcia.
Yes, thank you guys. That was great information. Really enjoyed it, especially our walk around the Pfizer site. You guys are always inventive.
We did have
Okay.
several questions and a comment, and while you guys could answer the questions individually, I do want to share the comment because it might apply to multiple people.
Okay.
And that comment was from another one of our stewards, and they said, please be very careful with using moss treatment in your cooling towers. It's highly dependent on water quality, so you need to test beforehand. They had tried it and it plugged up their chillers, which led to a very expensive repair. So I just want to make sure that's out there. It doesn't work for everybody. And then I'll forward you guys.
Thanks for that comment.
Yeah, I'll forward you guys the rest of the questions later so that you can respond to the individual askers.
Thank you.
Fantastic.
All righty. Next up, we're going to have Renee Kramer. And Renee, I'm getting ready to hand you off the presenter thing. So let me know if you get that, and I will introduce Renee while she's getting all set up. Renee Kramer graduated from the University of Delaware in 2013 with a degree in wildlife conservation, agricultural and natural resources. Upon graduation, she worked for a private consultant with wind energy conducting wildlife impact surveys. And in 2015, she continued her studies at Duke University's Nicholas School for the Environment for ecosystem science and conservation, receiving her master's of environmental management and a certificate in community-based environmental management. She has been with DEQ for 3 years and serves as our Title VI and Environmental Justice Coordinator. In this role, she acts as the liaison between the EJ and our Equity Advisory Board and works with communities and staff to advance the department's EJ programs across the state. So Renee, I'm not sure if you're sharing your, there you are. All right, so we can see you. And if I believe I sent you the controls. Oh, hold on. Appeared on screen number 3. All right. Okay. So we see it, put in your editing mode. Okay, perfect. Thank you, Renee, and the floor is all yours.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for having me today. So I'm going to give a brief introduction of environmental justice. Oh my, sorry guys, technical difficulties. And then I'm going to go over our community mapping system and environmental justice tool. So DEQ operates under the definition for environmental justice that from the US EPA, that it is the fair treatment and meaningful involvement of all people regardless of race, color, national origin, or income with respect to the development, implementation, and enforcement of environmental laws, regulations, and policy. And at DEQ, we look at race and ethnicity, age and sex, disability, poverty, household income, and limited English proficiency. And we will look at an area that we are looking at and compare it to the state and the county averages. And so that will make a little bit more sense as I go into the community mapping tool. So just kind of keeping these things in mind. There are lots of other definitions of environmental justice concepts. So within environmental justice, people often will think of distributional justice, which is the equal distribution of environmental benefits and burdens. Sometimes people focus more on the procedural justice aspect of environmental justice, which is equal protection from rulemaking and enforcement, and then process justice, which is equal opportunities for meaningful engagement. And so when you're speaking to people about environmental justice, oftentimes different people will have different forms of justice in their mind. So it's always important to keep that in mind when speaking with people, because you might be talking about slightly different types of environmental justice or envisioning different things. And that oftentimes has to do with someone's lived experience of what they have experienced. And so that will really shape their definition. And then I always like to include an image that really helps to get the concept of the first image, which is equality, which is giving everyone the same tools within the system. And that's they're being treated equally. The second image is that different people are given different tools, and so they're being treated equitably so that they have the same outcome. They can all see the game. And then the third image is really reducing the systematic barriers and reducing the need to provide individual assistance. And it's a really great visual to remember as we're having conversations about environmental justice and equity. So to kind of focus in on our community mapping system, we went through a pretty extensive stakeholder engagement process during the development of the tool. We started with a lot of academic focus groups and contacting other states that have similar environmental justice mapping tools. And we also had 3 different public meetings across the state. And then we had several community organizations. We held specific meetings. And then on our website, we have a survey that is always open. And so this is our website. If you want to go access it and give it a whirl after the presentation today, it has links to the other states that we are aware of having good mapping systems. There's the survey to give us feedback or provide us with information of additional layers that should be potentially included. And then we have some documents on how to use it and how we got to where we are. So and we have our nice little logo, so that's fun. So when you open the map, you see our state of North Carolina. And within that, you see these darker orange highlighted areas, which are the state designated tribal statistical areas. So that's something just right off the bat that you can see. To access a location, you can either go on the far left and zoom in to a specific area, or you can search your address, and either one will be just fine. There's also there's an information tab over on the far right side that gives you a little bit more information, and then we'll walk through what all the buttons on the bottom also do. So, of course, the first map, as you zoom in, you will start to see that the map will auto-populate with the DEQ permits and incidents. An incident could be something such as an underground storage tank spill that occurred. It goes back pretty far. And then permits, of course, are if a facility holds an active permit, it's going to be on this map. And so the first little image down here is just the legend. The map is done by block groups. So that's what the environmental justice tool that I'll get to in a little bit is on that level of block groups. And as you can see, each different type of permit has a different color and different shaped dots or image. The next piece is called the info summary, and that's this little almost alien looking thing over here. And this is really where the map starts to get really interactive and dynamic. as you move, as you pan across or zoom in or out, this will automatically update to reflect the number of facilities of that type in your map extent. So it will update as you're moving across the state and zooming in and out. So that's really cool because it allows the user to have like an interactive experience a little bit. On this over here, as you can see, if you click down, you can see each of those individual permits. And if you click on one, it will highlight the one that you've clicked on so you can find it. And then this is the same area, but just zoomed in. So you can see it has updated, as I was talking about before, from the 29 air quality permitted facilities. It is updated now to only 8 because I'm in a smaller map extent view. And so as you scroll down, you'll see all of them updated as well. You can also get more information on specific permits or incidents, and that you just click on the permit and this information will come up. It often has information as well about who to contact at DEQ, as well as information. We have a lot of our divisions use Laserfish or another similar type of online archive for all of the documents associated with a permit. And so some of them we're in the process of constantly updating our online system. And so they're not all available yet, but some of them will have a link to other documents. And that's where you can find all of the documents associated with that permit. And so that can be a really helpful database of information if you're really interested in one particular permit. But other information are kind of the dates. You can see when the permit was originally issued, the location, owner and affiliation, and just the permit number, which can really help start a conversation from a community member's perspective if they're trying to figure out what a facility is. You can also change the base map of the map. So here I've changed it to this imagery hybrid, so it looks more like a Google Maps view from the satellite imagery. So that's fun, and you can still see the tribal statistical areas as well as the boundaries of the counties and the block groups. And then another really cool thing on this first facilities map display is this screening tool. And so what you can do is if you click on this far right, I don't know if you guys can see my mouse, I realized just now, but on the far right bottom circle, there is, it has like a little magnifying glass type thing, and that's the screening tool. And so if you click on that, this screening box will pop up and you can click draw, and then you can draw a line, a square, a polygon, or just a dot. And here I've just placed a dot right there, and I have created a 1 mile radius around that facility or that dot location. And from there, you will get this screening, and this one that I picked doesn't have anything within the 1 mile of this example, but they would have a similar, just as the info summary, it updates. So if I increase that to 4 or 5 miles, then it would have any facilities that are within that distance of that point. And
Renee,
so
just
then
to confirm, we can see your cursor. Sorry for the interruption. Yeah.
That's okay. Thank you for that. That's helpful. So if we go back here, you can see this printing button. If you click print, you can then get a piece of paper that has this map and then a little summary report of the number of facilities. This is a separate one. But it will show you the count, as well as if you scroll down and further into the summary report, it will have information on the name and location of each of these, as well as the census data for the block group that facility is in, or that any block group that would intersect with your radius. So that's just some easy to just print really fast information that you can just get really handy and take to your whoever you want to take it to, your local government, your local planning board, show them what's around an area as people are considering how they want their communities to change and what kind of industry somebody might want to invite into their community and really how they want to shape their community. So it can be a really powerful tool to just be able to print something like this and show the local planning committee, or if an applicant is looking for a location, this can also kind of help people see what else is in that area. And so the next thing on the first, this layer is adding on the environmental layers. We have added managed conservation areas. So these are things like nature preserves or conservation easements, as well as the flood zones. And so as you can see, the flood zones are these blue lines that kind of look like rivers, but they're not rivers, they're flood zones. So they might contain a river, but anyways, then the other natural areas you can see are overlaid. They're a little hard to see with this base map, so maybe you're doing it at home, maybe pick a different base map than what I have done. And then I've left on the environmental layers here, and then now I'm looking at more of the demographic information. And so here I have selected, I've clicked on this block group here, and so you can see that it's highlighted, and it will give you just an overview of the very most simplest environmental justice indicators, which the total population of this block group is 468. And approximately 52.78% is minority, and approximately 57.85% is classified as low income. And then to find out more information, you can click here to access the environmental justice tool. And so that is going to take you to this page. You can kind of see a faint pink highlighted, that is block group that was originally clicked on. When you do it in the actual application, it will kind of flash like 2 or 3 times with a brighter pink, and this was kind of the tail end of it in my screenshot. And so here we just have a little bit more information. The area demographics of this area is once again averaging all of the data that's in this map frame. So again, as you zoom in or out, that data is going to update, which I'll show you in a second. And then as I started out in the beginning mentioning that we'll compare to county or state data, in our version 1.0, we originally didn't have this comparison with the state information, and we've added that in because it's an important factor to know how does my community compare to the state average as a whole. And so as I said before, the demographic information here is on the census block group level, which is smaller than the census tract level. But the health dashboard over here, the health data is on a county level. And so that's just an important distinction to be aware of as we go through. So we have race and ethnicity is highlighted here, as well as you can see the heart disease compared to the state, preterm birth rate in comparison to the state, stroke, and asthma as well. And so here I've zoomed in slightly. So from this original view, as I zoomed in, you can see it automatically updated this information and changed the composition for you to see that visualization change. And it did change slightly, so it looks like it was crossing a county boundary. So the health data also slightly changed. Other information that we have on the demographics is the annual household income, which again, you can compare to see how your area performs compared to the state. And then over here, we have also different indicators. We have cancer, infant death rate, cardiovascular disease, and number of physicians, which is kind of a proxy to sort of get at access to healthcare. Of course, access to healthcare is much more complicated than that and includes a lot of other factors like health insurance and lots of things, but that's just one indicator to start kind of thinking about that. Then we have the median household income as compared to the state, and I've also over here changed to the facility map. So there's several maps over here. It doesn't change the data, it's the same scale, but it just shows you the same facility map that we were looking at on the last screen. This is still the facility map, but is the quote unquote dependent populations, which are individuals under 5 years of age or over 64 years of age. And then there's some additional indicators of child mortality rate and diabetes as well. And then we have limited English proficiency, which is the population that has trouble speaking English well, or who speak English less than very well. And so here you might consider, this looks like a very low percent in this area, but if it was a higher percent, you might consider doing a little more research and seeing what languages are spoken the most there, and consider potential translation services if that's something that would be, that's one way that DEQ uses it, I should say. And then this map is the sensitive receptors, which are going to be things like schools, churches, hospitals, nursing homes. And you can see from here, they have their little symbols. And I failed to remember to do this, but if you click on it, it will also give you the address and the information associated with that facility. And so you can get a little bit more information from this if you want to reach out to a specific facility or several facilities in an area that you're interested in. I think, yeah, so that's the end of it. I think before I open it up for questions, I just would want to really emphasize the fact that it's really a user defines your own area, and it's a very interactive tool. So taking screenshots like this, you definitely can see it, but it kind of takes away from the like interactive experience that is really cool to have with the mapping system. And so I really encourage you, if you have some time, to go back on our website and check it out. It's just really fun to kind of play around in, and really can see how your community, what's in your community, and how your demographics and health compared to the rest of the state. So yeah, it's a fun tool to play around with. And so with that, I will stop. I think I'm a couple minutes early from the 5-minute warning, but I will stop and open it up for questions.
You did well. There are not currently any questions, but I'm going to give folks a few minutes to type any in. Make sure you're using the little chat box on the right side.
Yep, and this is Marsha. I actually do have a question. So I was just wondering, Renee, whether there's any documentation on the tool, or you can speak to how we use it in our permitting programs?
Yeah, so great question. So one of the documents, well, no, forget that. Let me start that response over. So the main way, as you could kind of probably get from my couple of my comments as I was sharing it, is it really helps us at DEQ inform our outreach and education, especially if we have a permit application. We'll run it often and see what the demographics look like, and that will inform what kind of outreach strategies do we need to translate something? Do we need to give a little extra outreach in an area? The equality versus equity slide that I showed at the beginning, that kind of can speak to several things, one of which is our outreach and education, that we can't just post it in a newspaper, which is often the legal requirement of DEQ, and expect everybody to get that information equally. You know, some people can't afford newspapers, some people just don't get newspapers anymore. So what kind of outreach do we need to do? Do we need to send flyers? Do we need to identify the churches in the area, because those are often community centers? Do we need to send information to those churches? And just really identifying what kind of outreach to do for a certain permit application is really the primary way that we use it at DEQ. I also kind of mentioned about bringing things to your local planning board. So community members will really encourage them to bring it to their local planning if they do or don't want a certain type of facility in their community, to really bring it to their local government at the earlier stages and help planning from the very beginning about locating facility locations and siting and that stuff that goes on at local government. And so we're hoping it's a tool that can be used at all stages of the permitting process before a permit even gets to DEQ as well. So I hope that kind of answered your question.
It did, yes, thank you. Angela, did we see any other? Oh, Scott, go ahead.
I have an internal question as well, but I'll defer to any audience members. Angela?
There are still currently no audience questions in here, so.
So internally, just for example, if you were to click on, say, Eaton and Asheville or Pfizer or any other ESI member, information on that, would it, in the box, information box, is there room or does it show that they're an ESI member?
That's a really good question. I don't believe it does show that, but that's definitely a conversation we could have if that's something that that people would be interested in.
Okay. And then a question did pop in regards to outreach. Has there been any public outreach that utilizes social media?
Yes. During around March or April period, right around the coronavirus, when that happened, we all of a sudden had to completely change our outreach and meetings in general. We could no longer, like everybody else, could no longer meet in person. We couldn't go down and meet with some of the really hard to reach communities don't have great internet access, but social media is definitely one way that we have used. That's a platform that we've definitely used and have leaned into a little bit more during the time of COVID, as have many other people, for sure. So yes, we've definitely done a lot more social media.
Okay, and we had another one. Did your outline of the state recognize tribes included in the federal tribes list? And how do you differentiate the two groups?
Yes, so the state designated tribal statistical areas also encompass the one federally recognized tribe that North Carolina has, the Eastern Band of Cherokee Indians. I almost messed up that name, sorry. So it does include that as well. It does not differentiate visually on the map. It does not differentiate the difference between both the federal and the state recognized, because it just doesn't. I didn't have a because to say for that, but no, it does not differentiate on the map. It's just one color for all of them.
Okay, great.
Yep, and I'm not seeing any other questions come in, but we did have a member chime in that it would be great to add ESI status onto that, Renee. So we'll follow up with you. We do have a GIS-based map of where our members are, so we can provide that to you and you can add it to the community mapping tool.
Awesome.
All right.
Thank you. Yeah, we'll definitely talk about that offline.
Yes. And thank you again, Renee, for sharing the community mapping tool with our members.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
All right. So folks, that's going to wrap it up for day one of our ESI conference. Come back tomorrow. We're starting at 9:30 and you're using the same link that you got. You'll get a reminder in the morning. It may say, we realized today, it may say GMT time, so the times may be off a little, but 9:30 tomorrow. And we'll be having folks from our recycling group talk about the Recycling Right campaign and also talk to you about where North Carolina's recycling market's sitting right now. And we'll hear from a couple of our members about projects they've implemented to reduce paper waste and increase electric vehicle adoption. And if you'll just fill out our survey as you leave today, well, thank you again, and we'll see you tomorrow. Have a good evening, everybody.